Just a little bit of background on them if you're not familiar with Jimmy. They were founded, he founded the company back in 2006 out in El Paso. They've been with us since 2011, and currently today they have 16 employees. There's Jimmy in the middle as we say hi to Jimmy, and I think Jimmy joined us today on the webinar, so a shout out to you, Jimmy, and hopefully I do you justice here as we talk about your great company and some of the things that you've been doing over the last few years. They're pretty much a full-service company, so they're doing water, fire, mold. They do some carpet cleaning and some biohazard and trauma scene cleanup. So prior to joining More Floods, take you a little bit back to the journey that Jimmy himself was on. And he had started with his carpet cleaning business and was really looking to diversify and especially to get into water damage work. And you know, he had been trying for a few years, a little trial and error on his own to get that water damage work stood up, but he really wasn't getting the results that he was looking for. So he started to kind of go out there and look at what solutions were available to him to help him address that. He was doing some lead generation at the time. He was also looking into potentially purchasing a franchise, but ultimately he decided he wanted to remain independent and kind of avoid some of those constraints that he felt would be placed on him if he were to join a franchise program. And really it led him to realize that the real company growth that he was after was going to come if he was able to apply systems across the company in both marketing and operational sides of the organization. And that's really where he found More Floods. And it's interesting in talking with Jimmy, and I've gotten to know him both at the national sales meeting and in the process of gathering this case study together. You know, he was being marketed to, advertised to by More Floods, and obviously was seeing us at all kinds of different events. And then really, so you fast forward to last year, to 2017, you know, with a continuous flow of work coming in from the referring parties that he was targeting, he really decided in 2017 that he was going to take a step outside of some of that day-to-day and really work on the business. And you hear us talk about this a lot, that real growth and scale in a company comes when you as the owner are able to step outside that day-to-day, not you know, having to wear all those hats and really work on the business and not in the business. You know, for a number of years, he had been implementing these systems, and he was really there in the weeds, to his credit, and making sure that those systems became a part, really, of the DNA of his company. But then in 2017, he really decided, look, I need to, now that those are working really well, let me step outside that. And he wanted to continue to refine those operating systems and build more of the operating systems that More Floods provides and those processes into the company. And this is a quote directly from him. It was hard work, but it's paying off. And you can't say it any simpler than that. It does take hard work to take systems and make them and embed them as part of your company. But that's truly where growth came from for Jimmy and for many of the members who have done that. And that was a great quote to hear from him. So looking forward into this year, he's going to continue to drive operation systems of the company to complement those marketing efforts. You know, again, Jimmy's quote, marketing cannot grow if operations is missing. You have to grow as a whole and not in pieces. And that's absolutely true. And as I mentioned early on as I started here, even though we talk about the quote unquote, say, plumber marketing program or agent marketing program, you know, we have deliberately, through our own trial and error and over the years and our own learnings, made sure that there are operational systems components built into that marketing, and that's key. And that's, I think, what Jimmy was realizing and what he's sharing with us here. He's continuing to plan on diversifying his marketing targets. So now that the agent marketing and the plumber marketing is really singing along, he's looking at going after others, real estate agents, property managers. And I have no doubt that you'll see Jimmy in the Facebook forums inquiring about that, right? Because we know that there are a lot of More Floods members out there who have been successfully working with real estate agents and property managers, and I'm quite certain that Jimmy's going to take full advantage of tapping into your wisdom via that Facebook forum, via the roundtables out at the national sales meeting to tap into that. And he's also looking to continue to grow those relationships with insurance agents. And he's really planning to implement systems to nurture his existing customers, create more consistency in the quality and service, and continue to ensure that he's got a happy, loyal customer base. I want to talk about that more in here in just a second, but let's look at the results, right? So when he joined us in 2011, his annual revenue from the water damage side was in the neighborhood of $70,000. Today, he's doing about $1.4 million a year. That's a huge increase. His company grew from the couple of employees he had when he first started with us to 16 employees today. And I know, and having had the pleasure of talking with him and doing the case study interview with him over the phone, he attributes a lot of what he took from the More Floods program into his company to that growth. So Jimmy's keys learnings, and these are straight from Jimmy. You have to commit to the systems and the processes. Utilize the member support and the entire More Floods team for help. Do not try to go it alone, because you don't have to. And I think this is one of his later learnings. You grow at the rate at which you work on the company. As many of you have had and will have, and as Jimmy certainly did, starting out pretty much with himself and a couple of employees, he had to work in the company. But it was in doing that and having his firsthand experience in implementing those systems, and then being able to step outside of that and work on the company, which allowed him to do some leapfrog growth, I think. And commit to being consistent, and the program will work. His quote, "More Floods works. You just have to place your trust in the systems and the processes." And I couldn't echo that more. I couldn't say it any more clearly than Jimmy did there. But I want to talk a little bit about behind the numbers. And again, having met Jimmy out at the national sales meeting, having talked to him during the assembly of this case study, and having had the pleasure of him sending his people here to various other types of trainings here at More Floods, I can tell you that my take on this is that his growth from 70,000 to 1.4 million probably had a little less to do with plumber and agent marketing programs and using the network. I really think that what evolved out of that was a really strong brand in his company and a branding process. And how did he do that? Well, as he said in his own words, the team committed to consistent application of the various systems across the company. And what that enabled them to do were the hundreds of little things that systems are all about, and doing them the same way every time. And now I know that his customers will get the same quality experience every single time. And I think that if you're going to have experience that kind of growth, it has to come because you have repeat customers coming to you, those plumbers, the insurance agents, as they know you, like you, and trust you, and you deliver that consistent experience to them, which can only come from doing those hundreds of little things the same way every time. You keep those referring customers. So I want to talk just a little bit about branding in that respect, and I think now that is probably the single most powerful growth tool in his arsenal. It is so because a number of things. It thwarts the competition because they can't copy what they can't see. I often talk about this in the marketing rep class that we hold here. Sometimes we think about branding and marketing as the logo on the side of our truck and our website. And while that's certainly part of it, and having a consistent treatment to your logo and the colors and the fonts is important, where branding and where systems really, where their power really comes into play, is all those hundreds of little things that happen behind the scenes that your competition never sees. We talk about the fact that, for example, in the plumber marketing program, there are hundreds of steps involved in that program, and each one of those steps is not there by accident. It came about because of trial and error, but when you apply those, most of that your competition can't see. They can see your truck rolling down the road. They can see how you talk about your company on the side of your truck or on your website. But all those little things that happen behind the scenes, they can't see. So that's one of the things that branding does for you. The other thing it does is it attracts great employees and makes them proud and helps retain them. And we're going to go through a few of the pictures that Jimmy was gracious enough to share with them about his company. And no surprise, when we asked him for pictures about his company, what did he send us? He sent us pictures about his people. And I'll show those here in just a minute. And great branding also insulates you from a lot of the highs and lows that you might be experiencing. One month you might be doing 20 water jobs, the next month it might be a lot less. Branding, as we've talked about it today, and its ability to deliver a consistent experience to your referring parties day in and day out, is one of those things that insulates you from those highs and lows. And I can tell you that great brands get a huge return on investment out of their overall marketing and sales and advertising costs. If you're having issues with your advertising, if you don't feel like whether it's your online advertising or your mailings or whatever it is aren't returning what you're hoping for, one of the first things that I would point you to, and when I work with members who are struggling in those areas, we take a look at some of those branding elements. And what is that? Well, in my mind, every touch point with your customer is an act of branding. Again, whether it's the logos on your website or on your trucks, but things like answering the phone and how you answer the phone. Believe it or not, that touch point has a huge impact on the brand perception that your customers have. How you walk up to the customer's door, the uniform. I mean, if you've been here for the More Floods training, we talk about those things. And yes, does some of this sound tedious? Does it sound like, well, does it really matter if I answer the phone the same way every time? Does it really matter if I take that step back from the customer's door when she opens it up? Absolutely. It is those kinds of touch points that build a brand. Obviously, the events that you hold, the website, and so forth. Everything you can think of where you have an interaction, whether it's you as a person or you as your company on the side of a truck or on your website, interacts with customers out there is an act of building your brand. And by applying these systems that we provide and being consistent in the use, Jimmy has built a fantastic brand. And I can tell you that firsthand, not just from my interactions with Jimmy, but when he sends his people here, the way they carry themselves, the questions they ask, their dedication to getting every ounce out of the training that they can get, tells me that these systems that he's applied in the company have now become a part of the DNA of Jimmy Garza, Inc. And I'm quite certain that he'll continue to see the growth that he's seen and be successful in whatever marketing avenues he's going into because of that brand, and that's really what has catapulted him to where he wants to be. So let me take you through a few pictures of Jimmy, and then I'll turn it over to Cliff. You know, it was interesting, as I said, when we asked Jimmy to send us some pictures, and most of the pictures he sent us were of his people in various settings, but this one really grabbed my attention. You know, when you can commit as a company, and I can tell you just by looking at the picture of his people and having met a number of them, and of course Jimmy himself, when you're doing these kinds of philanthropic efforts, again, I think you're doing them because you have a great brand. I think that you're convinced as a company that these are the things you should be doing, and you don't do them for selfish reasons, but they absolutely add to your brand. And it's great to see them doing these kinds of things, and it was great to see this kind of a picture when we asked him just to send us pictures about his company. This is one of the first ones that came across. And as I mentioned, it's all about his people. So he's got some fantastic people in there in his office, and you'll see that, you know, it's a great office environment. You can tell that the people are happy to work there. You know, you see that quote in the background, a place for everything and everything in its place. Benjamin Franklin's quote that we quote here a lot, and you'll see us post up a lot. It's clear that that they're living that